All right, still with me, former federal prosecutor Joe Brewer and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor as well, David Bruno. David, you know, I'm still scathing from the fact that this guy, he's overdrafted by 300 some odd thousand and gets a $5 charge. I go over $10, they're charging me 25. So I'm upset about that. So let's just start there. And I want, you know, and I have to ask you, how's this playing to the jury? Because legitimately, I'm angry, right? And I imagine jury hears these numbers. First of all, they can't relate. Second of all, you know, how are they taking this in? I understand the importance of this because I think it helps understand the amount that was on the line, the pressure's building up. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have the same problem. It's the same reason why this evidence shouldn't come in because, I mean, look, we're dealing with some big numbers. Probably jurors can't even relate to having as much money as we're hearing here. And then bad guy. This is a bad guy. This is a bad guy that's doing bad things. He's overdrafting. He's getting preferential treatment. The bank's paying his expenses. Nobody could relate to this. And this is why he goes and shoots his son in the face with a shotgun. And again, I go back to that. There's got to be a nexus. And most people in this world, when they have debt like this, you know what they do? They declare bankruptcy.
Yes.
That's an easier option than going to shoot your wife and son. You know, and I'd imagine that there's an argument can be made for that. And also, he does have equity in a number of different properties as well. So it's not like he was insolvent. So I see it. I have a problem with it again and again. I see a shoddy investigation, a shoddy crime scene, some proof issues, and then they roll out this theory, making him look like a terrible person.
Joe, no one would ever know you were a prosecutor. Don't let your prosecutor friends hear you talking like that. Joe Brewer, on cross-examination, they brought out the fact, and I thought it was a pretty effective cross-examination of this witness. He basically got him to say that, hey, and it was clear from direct as well, if he wanted more money, he could have gotten it. There wasn't any real process. They were just kind of giving him money, carrying him, keeping him afloat. And as David said, he could have filed for bankruptcy. Again, all these things, I think they cut both ways, which whenever I see evidence like that, Joe, I think reasonable doubt.
Well, to start with, on the off chance any of the executives, any of the banks that I use are watching, I feel like I'm being very fairly treated, and I don't want anyone to think differently. And to David's point, people in pressurized financial situations oftentimes kill themselves, and I don't say that I don't say that lightly, but he's right. This wouldn't be sort of the normal everything from filing bankruptcy to harming oneself to a number of other alternatives other than killing ostensibly the people you love the most. The whole thing is offensive. The financial numbers themselves are offensive to the jury because they're incomprehensible. It's almost like paper money. It doesn't make any sense, and it sort of doesn't compute. And to your point, Michael, you said it sort of cuts both ways. I mean, in some ways, I think that a juror could be sitting there saying, yeah, I can't even imagine the stress I would feel by being indebted to that number. On the other hand, it could create some reasonable doubt and just sort of not being able to sort of understand kind of the relationships are at play as between this very powerful attorney and this very powerful local bank that is doing something between, you know, just sort of taking care of a local powerful attorney and some sort of actual self-dealing.
Yeah, no doubt. The Murdaugh name carried some weight. That's what I took away from it. All right, guys, stand by. Folks, we know. Or was the intended target Alex Murdaugh himself? Could it have been any one of the victims of his years of financial misdeeds, failed investments, or even blowback from his alleged involvement in the drug trade? Was his family just collateral damage? All right, let me bring back in my guest, still with me, former prosecutor Joe Brewer and criminal defense attorney David Bruno. And Joe, I'll start with you. The reason I raise that is because I think universally, we all feel like this motive being put out there by the state is a bit flimsy. So I went looking around for perhaps some other things that might have happened. It could have been that Alec was upset at Paul because he put him in a position where he might lose his Moselle property, the beach house, and all of his money. Was he mad at Maggie because she was going to get a divorce and didn't want to get involved in that beyond all this other financial problems he had? Or was somebody coming after them? Any thoughts about that, or other ways that this prosecution could have gone to make a more cohesive argument?
Michael, I'm about to chase a wild hare here. So I don't know how. I don't think there's a unified theory on why he would have premeditatedly killed his son and his wife in the way that alleged. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not smart enough or rural enough to come up with this, but I had a conversation with a 30-year-old a criminal defense attorney who's been practicing for over 30 years in this state and knows the courtroom and the backwoods. And he raised a theory to me that rings very similar to the staircase trial in North Carolina, Mr. Peterson, and the proposed alternative theory of the owl that came in and attacked Ms. Peterson, and then that Mr. Peterson then opportunistically either didn't assist her or did something in addition. And that video of that dog, where Alec is nearby within probably something like 8 to 10 minutes of when they think the murders happen. There's a dog misbehaving. It belongs to Rogan, doesn't belong to the family. And it had a chick in its mouth. And here in South Carolina, there are plenty of people that don't, that are offended when animals not their own mess with livestock that are their own. And the theory would be that there might have been some altercation between Alec and Paul that led to a non-fatal injury, and that Alec, on the back end of that, motivated by some of these other things that we're talking about, and the fact that his wife saw it, and the fact that he had made a total mess, may have then made some in-the-moment choices that led to the death of both his wife and his son.
Yeah, very, very interesting theory. Lots of theories thrown out there. I'm going to give another one out there. This was put forth by our friend, Cousin Eddie Smith, right? He's going to be testifying. Well, we don't know yet, but he might be testifying in this case. He even had a possible theory. I think this one's pretty much been debunked by kind of the way the evidence is sort of going. But let's call that up real quick. This is what he told investigators when they were interviewing him. He said that he had heard that Maggie had a thing going with the groundskeeper, which I never met him, don't know his name, and Paul went down to one of the barns and caught him and got upset. And he went and got his rifle, and he was hollering and screaming at his mama. His mama was running and fell down, and she got up. He shot her, and the bullet came out of the top of her head, and then he turned to the groundskeeper guy, but the groundskeeper had already went to his truck and got a shotgun. Again, that one doesn't really hold water, but that just gives you an example of all the different theories thrown out there. But again, as a former prosecutor, David Bruno, when you're stuck with the facts as they exist, and you know, Joe's account could be plausible, makes sense to me just as much as any financial thing they're throwing out there, but you got to get stuck with the facts you have. They don't have anything to suggest the thing that Joe was suggesting, which makes sense. So you got to go somewhere else, and they decided to go with the financials.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the jury may struggle because of this. I mean, anytime an attorney is in the courtroom, and I lecture and I present and I'm in the courtroom myself, the attorney wants to be a credible source in front of the court, when you make objections or legal motions and arguments, and is certainly credible in front of the jury. And the problem with the prosecutor's theory here, and there may be many of them, and the more the jury starts getting and tasseling with various different theories, that's when the reasonable doubt creeps in. But this particular prosecutor is really locked into this financial crime as a motive. And I believe that this could be one of the things that the jury points to say, you know, I'm not for that. Why would he go and do this because of these things? Especially, he's got equity in the homes, and he could declare bankruptcy. And also, I came across this testimony today about the cause of action against Alex Murdaugh. Let's not forget, Alex Murdaugh was not the operator of the boat itself. It was his son. It was his son Paul. And to get Alex Murdaugh, there has to be some negligent, he called it negligent parenting, meaning that he was aware and he testified that that Paul was using Buster's ID, and that Alex Murdaugh was aware somehow that there's drinking and driving a boat. So look, I think that there may have been arguments and defenses for Alex to begin with on the cause of action. I certainly, but the prosecutor steps up, makes an argument, and now his credibility's at issue too.
Yeah, and I think once that credibility is shot, that causes problems for the jury, and you know, the defense is throwing out this two gunman theory. If in fact, Joe, that this looks like, yeah, because a lot of this looks like it couldn't be done by one person. It all doesn't make sense or add up as far as the timeline goes. If that is in fact the case, is that a problem for the prosecution? Will this case be lost on that basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think if Dick delivers on his promise to demonstrate that there's some real question about the number of people involved in this crime, I think that's going to be enough.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really a place where they have to find fertile ground for this case. All right, Alex Murdaugh's former best friend took the